Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Global History. I am your host, Mr. Langella. So guys, welcome back. It's been a long 2 weeks. We're finally back in action. I'm sure you're all excited to be back and ready to roll again. So I'm glad to have you guys back again. I'm glad to start it up again. It's been a long 2 weeks, let me tell you. And you guys just finished the Enduring Issues for the medieval era. So I'm sure you guys are excited to be back learning some new material. Like I said to you guys before, I'm hoping everyone's safe. I'm hoping everyone's doing okay. Remember that, and try to enjoy the time you have with your family. You have 2 weeks. I know it's hard to really do anything with all this stuff going on, but understand that you still can enjoy your time with each other, with your families, and enjoy every second you have with them, okay? So with that being said, let's continue forward. So let me just firstly break down the kind of the outlook of the rest of the course. Remember, we do have several chapters left, and we're going to go through them standard time, just like how we've done before. There's going to be worksheets, there's going to be quizzes, there's going to be tests, there's going to be all of the above. So understand that that's how the class is going to work. So I'm sure you guys have felt before we left for spring break, there were some ways in which the teachers can give quizzes. We have specific test days that we can give, letter days that are that we organize certain classes and give quizzes and tests on those certain days and on certain time periods of the day. Okay, so let me just give you guys an outlook of how we will continue with our course. So the way it's going to work, guys, is that this PowerPoint is pretty thick, as in there's a lot of material that goes along with this PowerPoint. Chapter 14 is a pretty dense one because what it does is it kind of tags alongside the Middle Ages and kind of goes more in depth with certain things. So it's going to focus a lot on the Crusades. It's going to focus on the bubonic plague. It's going to go into the 100-Year War. And we're going to go into the formation of Western Europe itself. So how we start to see a lot of the different different nations in Europe, mainly England and France, are going to be the two major ones we're going to focus on. But we kind of see a lot of how it kind of shapes up to be the more modern shapes of the different nations we see today. Okay, so I just kind of give you an outlook here. So after section 2 is finished, we're going to have a quiz of some sort, and then obviously when we finish with section 3 and 4, we will have our test. Now, depending on the material we get through, it will change the day we have the quiz. Most likely it will probably be either a quiz by Friday, or I'll give you a assignment that might count as a quiz. It really depends on the time span that we are going through. Understand that we do need to get through material, and I do want to give you guys time, so we're not flying through stuff either. So that's why I can't give you a guaranteed day yet. I just wanted to kind of give you kind of a heads up of what we're going to be doing for this chapter, okay? All right, guys, so with that being said, let's get started. So last time we were here, guys, we talked about medieval Europe, right? We mentioned kind of the manor system, the feudalistic society that it's fallen into, the battle of all these different kings, and we even mentioned Charlemagne and his family that kind of unified basically all these European areas, mainly with the Franks, and then they kind of crumbled again, right? The family had crumbled again. Charlemagne's grandsons kind of destroyed every concept that he had unified them all behind, and kind of they fell back into the area of feudalism. And remember, the power of the church, guys, was kind of fading over time because it now was going closer to the kings. Now remember, the church was the unifying force behind everything, and that's kind of how we're going to start today. So as I mentioned to you guys already, there are 4 sections of this chapter. Chapter 14 first is going to be talking about how the church is going to reform and change kind of the issues that they were having to kind of reunify everyone. Then we're going to dive into the Crusades. We're going to jump into some changes in the medieval society itself, and then we're going to go into France and England developing into their own areas, and then lastly we're going to go into the 100 Years War and the bubonic plague. A lot of interesting stuff here, guys. So like I said, let's get started with church reforms and the Crusades. Alright, so just to give you guys kind of a setting the stage here, remember, this is also known as the Dark Ages, so we're still in this time area, right? The Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, we're still in this area. And last time we mentioned how basically a divide amongst all these smaller groups had increased because of a lot of the conflict that was going on from outside invasions, right? The Magyars were kind of attacking them and alongside the Vikings, and it kind of destroyed a lot of the centers of learning, right? Remember how we mentioned that there was a big time period where they focused on learning, and even Charlemagne was trying to get people to learn new material. Even himself was trying to get more intellectual because there was a kind of a lapse in education during this time. Because of all this fighting and all this death, it kind of caused people to say, listen, I don't want to learn new things, I just want to live, right? That's really my focus, and that's what happened. So that's why they called it the Dark Age, because it was really filled with violence, filled with not learning new things. And with this time period being the way that it was, the time of bringing everyone together in the church really unified them, right? There's this new age of faith is what they call it, all right? So as I already mentioned to you guys before, this is known as the Age of Faith, okay? The Age of Faith is basically the kind of connection between one person and their religion, and kind of this tie that brings everyone together, right? So as I said, monasteries started to kind of be more created, and people were trying to restore or expand the church's power that had been lost previously, right? So this Age of Faith was now created. Now, there were some problems with the church had already had. Now, some of the major problems that they saw was that basically the people that were running the churches were not really following what the major point of what religion was trying to teach us all, right? It's kind of basically thinking of the Bible is telling us to do certain things the right way, and then all of a sudden the people, let's just say, one of our officials are doing basically your local priest is basically doing the opposite of what he's telling you to do, right? He tells you to follow these different commandments, and all of a sudden he's breaking all of them, right? And that's kind of what the problem was. You can't really run an effective church if the people that are running that church are doing the exact opposite of what they're preaching, right? And that's kind of what was happening. We started to see church officials getting married. We started seeing how they used their positions to gain more power in feudalistic society. They're being basically gaining, paying off people to do certain things for them. They were even selling religious offices. So these are all simony is what they call it. They were doing these things that are really against what the church's message was originally, right? And that's really a problem. And because of this, the kings had basically used the power of late investiture, right? And remember, guys, this is kind of double dipping here. We kind of mentioned this issue before. So they used to use lay investiture, which basically made them be able to appoint bishops that were in their kingdoms. And the church officials, the higher-ups, the popes, felt as if they needed to really fix this problem, right? They had to have the power to appoint a bishops because it's their church, right? And that's what's really important to understand. So they start to see they identify all these problems, and they say, now we have to fix these problems, all right? So Pope Leo the IX and Pope Gregory the VII enforcing these new church laws that go against simony, which is, remember, they're selling religious offices, and to go against the marriage of priests. The popes that followed Leo and Gregory kind of reorganized the church to continue the policy for later years down the line. Starting in the 1100s, they organized the church into a kingdom. Now, remember, as I said before, this concept is already being talked about in the last chapter. It's just kind of reinforcing some of the material that we talked about before. They create canon law, which is what we mentioned last time, which is basically church law is kind of like using the Bible as a basis of how to run the papal state. Right, that's what canon law is, and anyone that travels through Europe, you can see that throughout Europe they're kind of affected or influenced by canon law or by religion. All right, and then we already talked about last time how the church collects tithes that basically use money to help take care of certain groups, as in the sick and the poor. So I want you guys to answer this question right here: how did the popes increase their power and authority? All right. Now, with this happening, the new reforms going in religious orders, we start to see kind of in different areas new religious groups start to form. Now, not saying they're creating new religions, but they're creating new religious orders, right? So they're kind of bases out of certain areas of Europe, right? So we start to see certain groups, as in Dominican order, which is basically Spanish religious order started by Dominic, and then the Franciscan order, which is actually Italian religious order started by Francis of Assisi, right? And then you start to see more different religious orders following the same premise of the church. It's just they're following, like, they're controlling different areas or helping control different areas for the papal state, all right? And even women had created their own orders themselves, okay? So when you look at the differences in kind of architecture now, when it comes to how the influence of churches themselves, right? So you've seen a cathedral before. If you haven't, they're really beautiful structures themselves. Now these were basically giant churches that were large meeting places of meeting and kind of obviously going to have your masses and everything, but these are places where education was being kind of pushed as well. And you can kind of have there's a difference between different styles of cathedrals, and we're going to go into that right now. So from 800 to 1100, churches were being built in Romanesque style cathedrals, and the big thing to focus on here is really how there are smaller windows, and the arches themselves are rounded, okay? They're rounded arches, and that's kind of its own. It's basically these cathedrals are based after Roman or Greek architectural styles. But then you start to see a new style of church architecture be built, which is the Gothic style. Okay, so the Gothic style comes from, it's really started in 1100. Germanic tribes, the Goths, created their own version. They kind of adapted some of the Romanesque styles and created their own version. Now, it's hard to tell really the big differences here, but you can kind of tell based on the different types of arches that there were. As I told you guys before, Romanesque arches are rounded arches, as I showed right here, as in Gothic arches are kind of pointed at the end. So yeah, they're still an arch, but at the end of the day, these are pointed, right? As you can see the point right here, and you can see that the mass, the size of it is bigger, and it's more of a kind of a pointed shape all around, as in all the top areas of roof, everything is pointed. As in when you look at the Romanesque, there's not really as many of kind of a pointed roofs or anything like that. It's really more rounded. The windows are smaller, but the big thing you really notice when you see Gothic churches is or Gothic cathedrals are stained glass windows, and there's a lot of different structures within or on the outsides of those churches. As even you can tell here that when you look at the Gothic, it has different statues on the outside, right? Outside over here. And then you look at the Romanesque, there's not really a lot here. There's just smaller windows, all right? So to kind of give you guys just a little bit, detail here. This is from the textbook. Talk about stained glass, and you can probably see a lot more Gothic cathedrals or churches just in your local towns, right? You can tell what style it's really coming off of, as whether it's a Gothic style church or if it's Romanesque style. But more churches nowadays are more Gothic style churches. As you can see, more churches and cathedrals are shaped in this manner compared to the Romanesque style. And I kind of just go deeper into this. They have, they have different little details that go into it. So let me just read this little part for you guys. The master builders in France, where the Gothic style originated, right, developed techniques of structural engineering that were key to Gothic architecture. Firstly, number one, ribbed vaults that supported the roof's weight. So you look at here, they have these ribbed vaults, as you can tell, that kind of support the weight of all the different structures that were above it. The flying buttresses that transferred weight to thick exterior walls. These are kind of helping keep up all the different the arches that were kind of in place, right? Number three, the pointed arches that framed huge stained glass windows, which you already talked about, the pointed arches. And then lastly, tall spires that seem to be pointing to heaven, right? And you look at all the different spires, the pointed parts of outside of the cathedral itself that were kind of very unique for this time period. All right, so now we're going to jump into what is the Council of Clermont. All right, and let me give you some backstory here. This is really the jumping point that starts the Crusades. Okay, now let me read you this top right here. So in early 1095, Emperor Alexis I of the Byzantine Empire, he had sent a letter to the ambassadors to the Pope Urban II asking for help against the Seljuk Turks, who took over parts of Byzantine Empire as well as the Holy Land. All right, so just give you some background. Emperor Alexis, right? Make sure you understand he is the emperor of the Byzantine Empire. Okay, the emperor of the Byzantine Empire, and he sent a letter to ambassadors to Pope Urban II asking for help to fight against the Seljuk Turks, which were the Muslims, which we had learned about previously, okay? So he was afraid, right, that they were going to try to destroy the Christian empire and the Christian ways of life. So November 18th, 1095 CE, Pope Urban II assembled the Council of Clerics, or leaders of the Catholic Church, to discuss a range of church issues in Clermont, France, okay? And at this meeting, right, basically they said they're bringing all the church officials in one room, and they're saying, what do we do, right? So they talk about all different issues, but this is the main issue. So on November 27th, Pope Urban II discussed the invasion of Christian Byzantine Empire by the Muslims, and in his speech, Pope Urban II encouraged the Roman Catholic Church clerics of the West to unite with the Orthodox Church of the East to fight the Muslims, to take back the Holy Land, to protect the Byzantine Empire. So let me make sure this is clear, guys. Remember, we talked about already before about how the Roman Catholic Church had split away from the Orthodox Church, right? We already saw how this was a problem. Now, with Emperor Alexis had basically was appealing to the Roman Catholic Church, saying, listen, I know we have our differences. I know that we are different, and I know that we've had our problems. But they see the enemy that is on the other side, the Muslim enemy that is trying to kind of take away land from the Byzantine Empire. And he appeals to the Pope and asks for help. Now, the Pope has a lot more influence than the East Orthodox Church. So he says, he has this meeting and he tries to say, let's unite together to help fight the Seljuk Turks. All right. So let me finish off this last part here. There hasn't been an exact transcription of the speech itself that he delivered at this meeting, but there were a lot of different recollections that were written based on the people that were in the room, right? He had wrote one, so Robert the monk wrote one recollection of the speech 25 years after the speech was delivered, and this is the version you're going to read for our assignment, all right? So what I do is I have an assignment, the Council of Clermont. It breaks down the different parts of the speech, and you guys are going to answer questions that go along with it. So before we get to that point, though, guys, I want you guys to we're going to answer these questions that go along with the PowerPoint when you finish the worksheet. All right. So I just want to show you guys how the worksheet looks and what you need to do. So let me just get you the guys there. All right. Okay, so this is the worksheet. This is what it looks like. The major question, guys, is what is the Council of Clermont of 1095? And this is kind of a rendition, a painting showing all the different church clerks, or the different higher-ups of the church that are sitting there kind of discussing these issues, okay? So what I do for you guys, I break down the different parts of the speech, and I kind of highlight different sections for you guys so you answer certain questions that go along with it. So the first section saying accusations against the Muslims, it breaks it down into all the different sections here that explain what Pope Urban II was saying about this major topic, all right? And then you're going to answer the questions that go here. And then you're going to go into the next section, the next section, the next section, and you're going to answer all the questions, okay? When you finish with this, you're going to then go back to the PowerPoint. All right, let me go bring you back here. You're going to answer these two questions. All right, so make sure you answer these two questions. So the first one says, how might the Council of Clermont be useful evidence in determining Christian motivations to fight the Crusades? And then what might be the limitations of this source in determining Christian motivations to fight the Crusades? And then what I want you guys to do is you're going to source the document. All right, so you're going to first you're going to say the who, where, when, and then you're going to go through all these different questions, all 8 of them. So the who delivered the speech, where was the Council of Clermont delivered, when was the Council of Clermont delivered, who was the audience, who created the written recollection of the speech, what type of source is this, what genre of the source is this, and why did he do this? All right, you're going to answer all these different questions after you do this. All right, now I wanted to do one more thing for you guys before we finish for today. I wanted to explain to you guys how this chapter's PowerPoint notes questions are going to be done. All right, I know a lot of people have had problems submitting PowerPoints to me, which I understand. I know when we have a long PowerPoint, sometimes it's hard for Canvas to accept that entire document in one shot, which is understandable, and I can understand that for some people it's fine, it works perfectly normal, and it's done with. Some people have had some trouble with it. So let me explain to you guys what I did for you. Okay, so what I did for you guys was I created a PDF. All right, Now in this PDF, I broke down all of the different questions that you would need to answer in the PowerPoint, right? So every question that's in the PowerPoint, I have it here. So what you're going to do is, obviously, as I go along the PowerPoints, you're going to answer the question. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take you're going to highlight it or take that answer and just embed it right here. Each one of the questions that are on the PowerPoint, I placed on this page, on this document. So you'll have access to each one. All right, so that's why it will make it a lot easier for you guys. It's not going to be it won't be as difficult for you guys to upload the questions. And this will just be one document where I can see see your answers to each one of these things. Okay, so instead of it being just a PowerPoint, you're going to basically submit the questions to me. All right, obviously you're still going to be taking notes, and obviously that's that's just obvious. And obviously you're going to be reading along with the chapter. So what I'll also do for you guys is I will also upload the chapter reading for you guys. You guys should have access to it. If you don't, then you guys can just go into our files. It's already there. Currently, it's the chapter 14, the formation in Western Europe. It's a PDF, so you guys can send this to Notability, so you guys have access to it, so you can highlight everything. And then when we get to the reading guides, you'll be using this obviously to answer those questions. All right, so let me just make sure I summarize everything for you so you guys know. Make sure you do the assignment, the Council of Clermont. Okay, you're doing this assignment for homework. And then, as I said to you guys before, this is not going to be due until the end of the chapter, but I'm just giving you a heads up now that this is what the notes are going to be looking like. And then lastly, I talked about how we will be doing quizzes and tests. Understand that my opinion is I want to give you guys a quiz after section 2 is completed. All right. The other option that I'm probably going to go with is after we finish the Crusades, we'll probably jump to a quiz. My opinion is, based on the amount of things that we have, I think I'll probably do that. So after section 1, we'll have a quiz. So I think we'll do that. So most likely then, guys, the quiz will then probably be Wednesday. And because that's going to be our testing day that we're allowed to have a quiz. So our quiz on section 1, so we'll finish section 1 by Tuesday. Section 1 will be a quiz on the church reform and the Crusades. All right. And it's going to be some multiple choice and a little bit of writing. It's not going to be a big quiz at all. And it's going to be pretty easy. So it'll be just like how we normally do our quizzes. The way that's going to work is that we have a certain time slot in which you can take the quiz. I'll upload the quiz at that time slot. I'll probably explain it more tomorrow. And you'll take it just like any sort of quiz and any other quiz that we've done before. All right. And that's really how it's going to work. It's nothing crazy. We've done this before, and it should be fine for you guys. Okay. So just want to make sure you guys know that, and have a good one, guys.